It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars show. May the 4th be with you. Happy Star Wars Day from my nerd world, and because it is Star Wars Day, you're getting this week's episode a few days early. We'll talk about Star Wars Day, why it's so special, and a little bit later on in the show, why it's incredibly special to me. Also, we got a brand new Kenobi trailer. I'm going to give you my instinctive reactions to it. Not going to go through a shot-by-shot breakdown, but I will share with you my thoughts of the Kenobi trailer. It's awesome, by the way. If you haven't watched it already, stop the show and go watch it right now. We do have some news of the week, and we will get into listener feedback. As always, you can email TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment up on YouTube, or go on by mynerdworld.net. All right, let's get right to this week's May the 4th be with you Star Wars Day episode of My Nerd World, a Star Wars show.
They're coming. Stay hidden, or we will not survive.
Leave us alone.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father? You still want Kenobi. He's gone.
Maybe you've been looking in the wrong places. I want every lowlife and bounty hunter to squeeze him. You can't run Obi-Wan! You can't escape him!
It is My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, and I'm your host, Jon Justice. Happy May the 4th to you. Happy Star Wars Day. This Star Wars Day, 2022, could not have come at a better time for me personally. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the show. Going to get into a bit of Star Wars Day, why and how this day became so special. Love that it was born organically. And then I'm going to do something I've done before, but maybe not quite in as much detail and personal detail as to why Star Wars has meant so much to me throughout my life, since I was, as young as 5 years old, and as I've mentioned many, many times, going to the movie theater in Southern California with my dad and seeing Star Wars on the big screen. Although by comparison, the big screen at that point in time wasn't anything near as big as the screens that we all get to watch movies on now. However, we do have a lot to get to, including some news of the week. It is Star Wars Day, things that you could expect today, things that already have dropped as well. But let's talk about this Kenobi trailer. If you haven't watched it already, as I mentioned, go pause the show, go and check it out, and come on back and restart the show. Not going to go through a shot-by-shot breakdown of the trailer. I just kind of want to give you my instinctive reaction to it. I was a little surprised to see that the full trailer was only a minute 30. It's kind of interesting. We're only a few weeks out from the debut of this 6-part series, and they really have, and we'll see what happens from here until the show is released, but they really haven't released a ton for this trailer. And I saw some commentary online on Reddit, in the Reddit Star Wars Leaks page, of people saying how Disney seems to be pulling back quite a bit on their promotion of their live action content. And I think it's very different when it comes to promoting things for online for Disney Plus than it is when we see the promotion for big motion pictures. I'm fine with it, and I don't think that Kenobi needs much more than what we've gotten so far. I think people are either hyped for it or they're not hyped for it. And so, having a trailer, the full trailer, be, just a skosh longer than the teaser trailer, and the full trailer being about a minute 30, is just enough, and it gave us enough. Visually, it looks absolutely fantastic. I love the theme in the trailer, the narrative of Obi-Wan being hunted by the Inquisitors. And we knew that going into it, but it's nice to see a little bit more and hear a little bit more of the dialogue about the search for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the desperation in the voices of the characters. Seeing Obi-Wan arguing with Uncle Owens was probably the moment that I went, yes. That alone, that little clip that you heard in the intro of Uncle Owen Lars arguing again with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Kenobi saying he needs to be trained, and he's like, like you trained the other one kind of deal. Yeah, give me that. I love, and I've talked about this before, I love added context to the existing content that we already have, especially when it comes to A New Hope. And that being the movie, that came out some 40-odd years ago, more than that now, right? 45 years ago. That movie that came out, back in 1977, being the most minimal of all of the Star Wars content and films, I do genuinely love that when we get little bits and pieces that add more context and weight and merit to what we see in that movie. And that's another moment right there. That is going to, that scene alone in the trailer, will stick with me, and I'm sure after I see the show, but will stick with me when I go and watch A New Hope again, and you see Uncle Owen and his fear, he's just not a farmer, Owen. He's too much like his father. That's what I'm afraid of. And now we'll be getting further context of that. That wizard's just a crazy old man. We'll see why Owen felt that way about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, at the end of the trailer, on top of seeing the Inquisitors, seeing some more spaceships, and getting a little bit better context as to why those probes go shooting out of Inquisitorius, where the Inquisitors call their home base. At the end, getting those quick shots, seeing Darth Vader being put together, knowing that Hayden Christensen will be in the suit, for a lot of this. Just really, really exciting. And they're saving almost all of Obi-Wan. He doesn't have a lot of lines. There's no real dialogue. But you just know that Ewan McGregor is going to nail this character in ways that I don't think we can even imagine. And even different than what we saw in his portrayal of the character in the prequels. I mean, clearly Ewan McGregor has excelled as an actor beyond Star Wars, but, he probably has, and I know he has, he's grown as an actor as well, and to be returning to this character with a show that's solely about him, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Ewan McGregor went and pulled out all the stops and is giving, probably the performance of his Star Wars lifetime. And so I'm just, I was not somebody that was overly excited or demanding to see this show initially. It wasn't that I didn't want to, right? I was like, okay, cool, we'll get an Obi-Wan Kenobi show. But now that we know what this is going to entail and the journey that Obi-Wan's going to have to go on and the importance of the story in and of itself, I'm as excited for Obi-Wan Kenobi as I would be for a major film release. And that is something that I have not been able to say for any of the streaming, the live action streaming content so far. Kind of off to the side of this whole thing, I had a thought while watching this trailer and thinking more about Obi-Wan Kenobi and kind of what my plans were for Star Wars Day. I think I'll be watching the Book of Boba Fett gallery. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. I think I'm going to watch The Force Awakens. That's my Star Wars plan for the day. I've been wanting to watch that movie for a while, and I'll explain why also here in just a moment. But it got me thinking that I would love to see, and obviously the only way this could ever happen, and I don't think it ever will happen, but the only way that it could happen would be as a Force ghost, clearly. I would love to see some interaction between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Rey. Again, I know it'll never happen, but in my opinion, those characters complement each other so well. Rey has, in my view, she's always been aligned the closest in comparison to Obi-Wan Kenobi for me. It's mostly her sort of unconventional relationship with the Force, And I know we had that with Anakin too, and certainly in the Clone Wars. But considering that, Anakin goes to the dark side and Rey never does, when you see, Rey tinkering with the dark side in The Last Jedi, and she goes into the dark side cave on Ahch-To, right? And just seeing how she kind of reacts with the Force and her attitude is very independent. And maybe you're going, well, Obi-Wan isn't really that way. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about her personality as well that really reminds me of Obi-Wan. And specifically in terms of the unconventional relationship and her being independent, the Obi-Wan Kenobi Satine relationship from the Clone Wars. I don't know why. There's something about Rey that I see in Obi-Wan and something about Obi-Wan that I see in Rey. Again, I kind of see her like a Kenobi. I was, kind of on board with the people speculating that she could be a Kenobi. I thought that would have been pretty cool. I'm totally fine with the way that they ended up playing out that character, but at the same time, I also would have been fine to see her be a Kenobi. But of course, that didn't happen. She's a Palpatine, and we actually have Palpatine news here in just a moment. So two more things real quick, and then we'll get on to the news of the day and your listener feedback and talk a little bit about Star Wars Day. But when it comes to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I'm also glad that we're getting it for this reason, because I do feel that the character Kenobi was missing from the sequels. And I do wish, I know we have Ben Kenobi, obviously, named after Obi-Wan Kenobi, named after Ben, but, and we have a little bit of the dialogue, especially in The Force Awakens, and then at the end of the Rise of Skywalker. I do wish that there was some way that Obi-Wan could have been in the background a little bit more in the sequel trilogy. Not necessarily a complaint, just something that I would have liked to have seen, but considering that Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't, and now he's getting his own show, I'm cool with it. And maybe I did want Obi-Wan Kenobi material all along. But that was something that I'd always thought about with the sequel trilogy, is that Kenobi was such an important character and played such an important role in both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. It makes story sense that his presence wouldn't loom very large in the background, considering that, he was only physically in A New Hope, even though he was a Force ghost in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then you get, decades down the line before we get to the sequel trilogy. But again, considering how important he was to both of those trilogies, it's just something that I would have liked to have seen. But now we're getting an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, so it's all good. One more quick thought, and then we'll get to Ian McDiarmid news and a couple other things. Force Awakens. One of the reasons why I wanted to watch The Force Awakens today on Star Wars Day, while I like The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker more than The Force Awakens, The Force Awakens will always be special in that it brought about the newest era of Star Wars. Something that I'll talk about when I kind of go through a little bit of my own relationship with Star Wars throughout the years. The hype around The Force Awakens, the care, and I believe that there was a lot of care and attention put into The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, but The Force Awakens was kind of a special one because it needed to land. It needed to work on multiple levels for the fandom because of the hype surrounding it. Disney purchasing Star Wars from George Lucas, the return of the theatrical releases, at the time still negativity around the prequels. Maybe the divisions. I'm going to say negative. We'll say the divisions around the prequels. The Force Awakens needed to work, and going and waiting in line when I saw it for the first time in Tucson, Arizona, on that Thursday of opening week, not going to a theater that has assigned seating now. There's like one theater in the area where we live here in Minnesota, north of Minneapolis, that doesn't have assigned seating, and it's AMC bought it. It was a sort of an independent theater, massive multiplex, but it's really interesting because it's not ever packed, right? And it must have been sort of a cheap buy and cheap rent for AMC to run it, because I'm surprised it stays open because it's a huge, huge theater. And it's a little dystopian going in and watching films there because it's one of those theaters where it's got many, many halls that go deep into all of the different theaters, and there's actually multiple concession stands that are deep within the building in and of itself, with the screens that are further back within the theater itself, but they're all empty because there's just not, there's not a ton of people going there. And I miss those days. I miss the days of crowded multiplexes. I think they're long gone. I think you're going to see a reduction in the size of theaters, and your tentpole films, your blockbuster films are going to be the films that dominate the screens, a lot like when I was a kid before the multiplex. But it's fun to go there because it does remind me of the days when we didn't have assigned seating and you had to arrive a little bit early, and the anxiousness you would get, or I would, not knowing whether or not you were going to get a good seat and hoping you get there early and getting your concessions and all that. And it's a lot easier when you go down because you get your assigned seating and you can show up 20 minutes late and miss all the trailers. But I do like going to the theater and still having those moments. Not all the time, right? Because we've been spoiled. But I went to go see The Force Awakens in Tucson without assigned seating. And I remember waiting in line for hours after I got off the air and doing my show that day, all day long. And then the longest 45 minutes of my life waiting for the movie to start. So it had that same feeling that I had the first time that I saw The Empire Strikes Back, which I've talked about before, how I believe that movie is a great film and revered because it is a great film, but also because it was the first Star Wars movie that we went and saw after being exposed to Star Wars for the first time, and the anticipation for that film and every film that came afterwards. Nobody knew going into Star Wars how great it was going to be, so you didn't really have that hype going into it, but you definitely had it going into Empire Strikes Back and every single film afterwards. So The Force Awakens brought about the same feeling of having to wait for a long time that The Empire Strikes Back did and The Phantom Menace did. And for that reason alone, even though I love that film, it will always remain a very special, meaningful, nostalgic film for me.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Ian McDiarmid, who plays, of course, Emperor Palpatine, was at ICCC convention this past week. On the topic of wanting to reprise again his role of Emperor Palpatine, doing that thing with my fingers, Ian McDiarmid said this: "There's a certain show coming soon that is set right around the time I may have considered to be very active. Whether or not you will see my physical body, I cannot comment on, but you will certainly feel my presence." So, interesting. A lot of people are reading into this. I think it's appropriate to do so. The question that I have is, all right, is he talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, or is he talking about Andor? Because clearly the Emperor could be in both of those series. So I tried to sort of rationalize, extrapolate which one would make more sense. And I think there's arguments to be made on both sides. I think let me put it this way. I think that the Emperor is going to be in both Kenobi and is going to be in Andor. To me, the question is, which one do we see a physical presence in, if we do see a physical presence? My bet is Andor. Simply because I think that Vader is going to be prominent in Kenobi to where a hologram of Palpatine, the Emperor, makes more sense. Whereas I think in Andor, you're going to see some more of the villains that we saw in Rogue One, and perhaps less Vader to keep him special, and maybe Palpatine show up in a more physical form. So it'll be interesting to see. That's kind of how I look at it. If you're going to see him in a physical form, I'm going to say it's most likely going to be an Andor. But at the same time, I could envision, I can see a scenario of the Emperor talking with Vader in Kenobi and, and discussing Obi-Wan Kenobi. Not to mention, Obi-Wan Kenobi's connection to the Emperor from the prequels. So right now, though, if I were a betting man, my guess would be maybe voice, hologram image in Kenobi, and perhaps physical presence in Andor. Maybe both if they play it right. I'm good either way. What do you think, though? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. So, for May the 4th, for Star Wars Day today, a couple of things come out. The Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett Gallery, the making of documentary, which I'm also planning on watching today, probably when I get done with the show here and go make lunch. Looking forward to seeing that. Already seen a few screen grabs. I guess Mark Hamill, I know. Mark Hamill is featured in the Book of Boba Fett Gallery documentary. He was on set for the scenes with Luke Skywalker. It looks as if they actually used his presence there as either a marker. Not de-aging, right? They used a different technology just because Mark Hamill looks so different now. But he's there on set with Grogu, specifically when Luke makes the choice. And so I'm looking forward to watching the Book of Boba Fett documentary to see exactly what his involvement was in the series. Plus, Apple released a documentary. I don't think it's out on Disney Plus. I think it's separate, just up on YouTube. But there is a Behind the Mac Skywalker Sound documentary that came out today as well, where it goes into exploring obviously Apple's involvement with Skywalker Sound and creating the sound of Star Wars. So looking forward to checking that out. I don't think checking that out as well. I don't think that's very long, but honestly, I hadn't gone and looked, but I saw it posted. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I don't expect any announcements whatsoever for Star Wars Day today, just because celebration's right around the corner, and that's where we're going to get all the announcements coming up on the 26th. The 26th of this month, the day before we get the debut of the first 2 episodes of Kenobi. I absolutely believe we'll be getting movie news on that day. So I have no expectations at all to get any sort of big major announcements today, which is fine. I remember last year, and time just flew by, but I remember last year for Star Wars Day, there was a lot of hype around getting all kinds of information about stuff, and it seemed like it was a bit of a letdown. The fandom really kind of went nuts speculating and putting out rumors of things we were going to get, and at the end of the day, it was just that. It was speculation and rumors that did not have much weight to them whatsoever. So this year's Star Wars Day seems a lot more grounded, and so far a lot more fun. I'm looking forward to getting done with the podcast and just sort of enjoying the rest of my day and just taking in Star Wars and just celebrating the day. I'm wearing kind of a classic Star Wars shirt right now. It's weird when you're a Star Wars fan like I am, because every day is kind of Star Wars Day. So how do you make this day different and unique? Because pretty much every other day I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt, or some days, a couple days in a row. But again, going to watch a little bit more Star Wars than I typically do today, just because it is such a special day. Crazy too, because the Star Wars Twitter account is being run by somebody new, because they've been tweeting all day today. Like, I just grabbed my phone and they just tweeted a moment ago. We know that the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer may have caused heavy breathing, so we partnered with Headspace to give you 30 minutes free. So, yeah, just a ton of promotion going on and replying to people. It's been a fun social networking day, a lot funner than it normally is, especially just because I do a news talk show. And this day being the day that we celebrate Star Wars, I really, really dig, because it did come out of the fandom and grew into a thing. It just came off of a riff of, it's May the 4th, May the 4th be with you. And throughout the years, it's grown and grown and grown to something now that started just within the fandom. And now, Star Wars is officially involved in this and turns it into a thing. They've changed the themes on the Disney Plus app, on the Star Wars channel, and of course all the things that I mentioned before. I was listening to Force Center, Ken Knapsack's podcast, on the drive-in today. Really enjoy that podcast. It's just down to earth. Just sometimes 2-3 people just talking about their love of Star Wars and everyday life, and just very casual and relaxing. And today they had one. It was just a special Force Center, May the 4th podcast, and I was listening to it on my drive home from work today. And they were talking, as I am, about Star Wars Day, and I agree with their take that they prefer Star Wars Day being on May the 4th for all the reasons that I just mentioned, as opposed to it being on the 25th, which marks the official day that Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope came out. And the point that was made on the podcast was that having Star Wars Day be on the organically grown May the 4th be with you, is more all-encompassing. And we're thinking deep about this, but, that's what we do on Star Wars podcasts. Whereas opposed to the 25th is specifically about A New Hope, May the 4th, is kind of you can cast a wider net in your fandom. And I dig it, and I agree with that. I like that we're keeping it to this day. I don't do the Revenge of the 5th, Attack of the 6th. I know a lot of people do. There's a whole week's worth, right? No, I just don't dilute it. Just keep it May the 4th, Star Wars Day, right? And for fans like you that listen to shows, to podcasts, and fans like me that do podcasts, it's Star Wars is such a big part of our lives. This is just perfect. One day of the year where we can all just kind of celebrate our fandom together collectively, put all our cares and worries aside, which I desperately needed right now, and just celebrate this thing that we love. Speaking of which, I want to take a little bit of time, not a lot, but a little bit of time, and I hope you'll hang out until we get to listener feedback to talk about what Star Wars has meant to me.
Something inside me has always been there, but now it's awake. And I need help.
My pocketbook needs help. That's what needs help when you're a Star Wars fan. I don't want to tread over ground that I have too much in the past, because I've talked about my fandom and my history with Star Wars before. But if you're newer to the show, as I mentioned, I was a fan of Star Wars before I was a fan of anything. It really taught me about fandom. That fandom of Star Wars grew into a fandom of Depeche Mode around 1985-86. And those two things ended up kind of swirling around each other, even though they never really crossed into each other in any way. I don't think there's any Star Wars Depeche Mode related things, certainly not officially. Later on, into the early 2000s, when I discovered NASCAR and my love of NASCAR, that became like the third big thing in my life that I was a massive, massive fan of. Never really a big fan of sports, but ended up through a series of circumstances becoming a huge fan of NASCAR and understanding why people become fans of sports and getting into the nuances and the intricacies and the storylines that develop within sports. And oddly enough, when it comes to NASCAR, there was a lot of crossing of Star Wars and NASCAR, a lot of promotion, especially during the prequels of Star Wars and NASCAR. But at a really young age, it taught me to enjoy, to be playful, and as I got older, to continue to grab hold of the youth that you have and to dream. Later in my young life, it was a friend, it was a comfort, it still is, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. And there was a period of time as I started to get older where Star Wars kind of drifted into the background after the original trilogy came out, before we knew we were getting the prequels. A lot of fans call it the dark years, where we weren't getting a lot of Star Wars. We had Shadows of the Empire, which was basically everything for a release, but apart from a movie. You had the Return of the Toys, but you had the Power of the Force line, which was a little goofy. I don't collect any of those because all the characters were sort of oversized and muscular, trying to take advantage of the trend of the day. But then as I got into radio, then came the prequels. And so when I got my first full-time job in Tucson, Arizona, working for an alternative rock station, that was right around when the prequels were coming out. And now I'm working in media, and I'm surrounded by the hype within media of the prequels coming out that sort of grew my fandom, brought the Star Wars fandom back into my life almost on a full-time daily basis. We played the Duel of the Fates, which had actual clips from the movie on the radio station that I worked at. That was riffing off of like Titanic, right? Because you had My Heart Will Go On that had clips from the movie, and there was a very brief period of time there in the mid 90s to the late 90s leading into the 2000s where that was kind of the thing, where you would take a piece of the music and you would add clips to it. And I remember we had that for the prequels, grabbing footage from the trailer that had been released. And now Star Wars had been there, in my life ever since. I was collecting a lot during the prequel trilogy. Sort of, and again, fandom being back into my life full time, getting married, having a wife who was a big fan of the Star Wars films when she was a kid and still was as we got married. And then you get into right around 2009 and something that I don't think that I've ever gotten into great detail on the show, and I'll try to do the short version. But when I was 37, I ended up I had a heart attack, and it turns out that I had a bicuspid aortic heart valve. I was born with it, and I had a ascending aortic aneurysm attached to it. Because the heart valve wasn't working appropriately, it caused this aneurysm for my aorta. So I had ended up having to have open heart surgery in fairly short order after it happened, about a week after I had the heart attack. They were going to wait a while, but they ended up wanting to do it because they were just afraid to wait too long. So they went in and did corrective surgery and gave me a titanium valve and put a graft in for my aorta. A couple of years later, unfortunately, though, we discovered through looking at something else that I was dealing with, which ended up being fine, that the graft in my that had replaced my aneurysm had a leak and had formed a pseudoaneurysm around my aortic graft, and I had to have a second open heart surgery. So they had to go back in, they had to remove it, they had to patch the hole. And, at the time, still being, 38, 39, going on 40, and I'm 49 now, I remember that I think because I was younger, it didn't quite hit me as hard as it is now, because I'm dealing with an issue now that I'll share here in just a moment. But it was life-changing, and I knew my life was going to be different. I have to be on medication now, and I'm on blood thinners, and I have to monitor my blood constantly and see cardiologists and stay up to speed and take care of myself. And Star Wars was and continued to be a comfort for me, and really does to today. And I know it sounds weird, but for me, when I watch Star Wars and I see like mechanical limbs on characters, right? Vader, more machine now than man, and thinking of life and death, and Yoda's Jedi teaching of the Force as it relates to my own belief in God and Christianity. Again, these things kind of they mix, and there is a level of comfort that puts in that I get from Star Wars. And I know it may sound weird, and I think everybody kind of deals with stuff in different ways. But there's a part of me that kind of goes, well, they've got, a lot of other people in real life have to deal with ailments and, artificial things on their body. And this genre that I love, because it is a genre of Star Wars, they have to deal with that as well. And you get into the dialogue. My dog is whining. You get into the dialogue of Star Wars, and Yoda, death is a natural part of life. Trust in the Force, do or do not. There is no try, and those things have a lot of meaning for me, and they relate deeply with my own religious beliefs as well, and they help. They do. They remind me of the things that are important and the gratitude that I have for the life that I have, and the fact that I am dealing with issues, but for the most part I'm still here. Which brings me to today, because and why I'm so glad that Star Wars Day arrived right now is that it turns out that it looks like there may be another leak. There is a leak in the graph for whatever reason. a very similar thing that happened going back to 2012 has apparently happened again. Now, my cardiologists don't seem too overly concerned by it. It seems stable. We actually think that it's been this way for about 4 years, if not 5 years now. So there doesn't appear to be any immediate danger. But on, Monday, this coming Monday, I'm going to have to go see a cardio, thoracic, a cardiovascular surgeon to have him look at a recent CT scan that I did and to get his view on what they want to do next. And I guess I kind of always expected, and I've been told that sometime down the line, years down the line, I'll probably have to have another surgery to replace the valve because they wear out. I certainly wasn't expecting to be dealing with anything like this now. And again, Star Wars coming on this day is bringing a lot of joy into my life, where for the course of the past few weeks, there hasn't been a ton because there's been a lot of concern. Kind of the cool thing, though, again, relating it to Star Wars and technology, and specifically with like the Book of Boba Fett, when you had the mods that were in the show, the modifications and all that. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of the Book of Boba Fett and not even really the biggest fan of those particular characters, I did kind of get a kick out of the modifications that those characters have. And again, just thinking about my own modifications, and it's kind of it's a joke that I've done a lot, over the course of the past 10 years, having had this surgery of I'm more machine now than man, right? Certainly not the case, but just jokes that I would make. So I'm very grateful that Star Wars is in my life, as I'm grateful for everything in my life. When you're facing this type of stuff, you tend to be reflective, and that's certainly something I've been doing the past couple of weeks. And I guess that's all. I just wanted to share that today, and I hope you don't mind me doing so here on the on the podcast. But Star Wars has been in my life my entire life, and again, I'm so very grateful that it is, especially times like right now. But to my last point, because I lost it and now I got it back. Surprisingly, what I found out in preparing to go see this surgeon on Monday is that I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but technology has advanced quite a lot in the past decade. And if they do need to do something corrective to fix the problem, it may not require it may not require something as drastic as open heart surgery again. I've already been informed that there are a couple of very non-invasive procedures that are available now that I don't believe were available when I had my other 2 open heart surgeries. So that's some good news. All right, so I'm done. I'm very happy the Star Wars Day is here, and let's go and get your listener feedback.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Salvador Mendez writes, I have a crazy theory for the Star Wars saga continuation. As you tell us, Star Wars narrative is a circle, like poetry. At the end of Return of the Jedi, Leia went to the moon of Endor. The moon is related to maternity, and we saw a lot of Wooklins around Leia, right? And Han. Wooklins. Wookins? Ewoks? Maybe he meant Ewoks. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you meant Ewoks. In Endor, she met Wicket, who awoke her maternity. At the end, we see Leia, Han kissing, and Wicket appears suddenly as a family portrait, a hint of Ben Solo. In Tross, at the Festival of Ancestors in Pisana, we saw a lot of Aki babies. Interesting. I hadn't really put the 2 and 2 together, but you're right. A girl named Nambi Gima, one of my favorite moments. I love Daisy Ridley's smile, and when she smiles in The Rise of Skywalker, every single time it melts my heart. She is probably my favorite character in Star Wars. Nambi Gima speaks to Rey about family and lineage. As I told you, her name is Nambi Gima. In Dune, Paul Atreides had a girl. Her name was Gayanima. Dune influenced Star Wars, yep. And I don't know if the similarity with the names is a coincidence. What if Rey is pregnant? What if Ben Solo's force healing created life as an effect of their dyad connection? Maybe that daughter is the heir of the Skywalker lightsabers. Now, that's interesting, Salvador. Okay, I like it. I dig it. With that, let's go ahead and hear from SheVP, friend of the show as well. Thank you, Salvador, who comments on something similar. I wanted to comment on the Reylos not being interested in a future Reylo content without a child being involved. I completely disagree, especially between 8 and 9. That wouldn't even make sense, LOL. As far as future content, and she was relating back to the podcast from last week where we talked about this. As far as future content, if they brought him back, I remember right after The Rise of Skywalker was released, the Reylo community was in an uproar, and there was a lot of focusing on little details in the final scene with them and the meaning of different things. And people were speculating that Rey might be with child because of Ben's hand on her tummy. That and possibly stirring the Force to create life in her, just like Salvador was talking about. A lot of Reylos got really offended by that. They thought if that happened, it would take Rey's agency away. No, I don't think that. I personally would have no problem with it. I wouldn't either. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I'm not sure how the child would have been Ben's. LOL. Not sure how that would have worked. But I would also have no problem with the future Rey and Ben content with or without a child or children. In fact, my headcanon ending for The Rise of Skywalker before it came out was an ending shot with Rey and Ben looking at the twin suns, and the camera pans down to their twins. That would have been the ultimate, it's like poetry, it rhymes for me. I also do think there will be future content with them, or maybe it's just my coping with it. But it would make sense if they brought him back. I was in a Star Wars chat not long ago, and they were discussing ways that he could be brought back. And someone said perhaps the Dark Acolytes could bring him back. And he's still on the light side, and then chaos ensues. I just have this unfulfilled longing with regards to them. Sigh. Anyways, that's my 2 cents, and thank you for the great show as always, John. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy your Star Wars viewings. I'll probably watch some prequels, getting ready for Kenobi. Can't wait, writes Emily, also known as SheVP. And she wrote me again to correct and said, when I said Rey's regency in the email, I meant agency. Yep, I was watching Pride and Prejudice when I was typing, no joke. That's really funny, actually. Thank you, SheVP. To the comment of both of those. Yeah, I don't know about the Force Child thing. I personally can't see that happening. And I don't know that Star Wars and the story group want to go there with it. I do think we'll see some Rey content. And if you're wondering kind of where all this jumped off from, it was going back to a podcast I did a couple of weeks ago talking about the potential of perhaps a live-action show set between Return of the Jedi and I put it between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker in that year period. I would dig that. So you can go back and listen to the other podcast. All right, I got one more from Javier. It says, last weekend I watched Rogue One. What a great movie. It has the right mix between a Star Wars and war movie. I have to say it's one of my favorites, and obviously just after it I go watch episode 4. The only complaint I have is the appearance of Leia and Tarkin, but it was worth it to include those characters. Next topic will be my disappointment with the Boba Fett season finale. Regards, Javier. I look forward to it, and thank you for the email. And that wraps the show up for this week on this special May the Force Be With You episode. I'm going to take the weekend off, and I'll be back again the following week. But I look forward to hearing from you, and specifically, how did you spend your May the 4th? I would love to hear your stories of how you personally celebrated. And while it's not Star Wars, it was inspired by Star Wars because I wanted to create a world of my own like George Lucas did, and I wanted to create science fiction space opera adventures that had the feel of Star Wars without being Star Wars. And so I sat down starting back in 2015 to write book 1 in my EMBARK series, which has now turned into 7 books, with book 7 hard release date on May 19th. So we're just about 2 weeks away from the release of book 7, Battle Planet. I'm in the final process of doing my last read-through and recording the audiobook. The paperback actually may be available within the next 4 or 5 days, but the ebook and paperback for sure will be out the 19th, and the audiobook will follow about a month later. So get caught up on the series today and pick up books 1 through 6. Treat yourself or a family member with science fiction, written for adults but great for ages 11 plus. Available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. As Earth faces its end, the fight to rule the stars begins. Taft Guardia picked the right day to upgrade his ship when fellow pilot Keith Amaro arrived needing help investigating a cryptic message left behind by her late aerospace engineer father. Unaware that an industrial accident inside Earth's largest supplier of civilian and military spacecraft has set off an apocalyptic chain of events, they make a shocking discovery. As war erupts during the global evacuation, Earth's evacuees stand upon the brink of annihilation. Realizing the significance of what they found, with the help of a ragtag squadron of pilots, Taft and Keitha might be humanity's greatest hope for survival among the stars. Don't miss this 2021 Tale Flick Discovery Sci-Fi Award-winning series. If you like your science fiction space opera filled with romance and action, then EMBARK is perfect for you. So please head on over to Amazon.com. Pick up your preferred copy. Book 1 is just 99 cents. You can get the first 3 books in ebook as well for a discounted trilogy price of only $3.99. The other ebooks are $2.99. Or get them in hardcover, paperback, or audiobook. If you want to show your support for my nerd world and you like to read, or again, you have a friend or family member who does and likes sci-fi, I would love it if you would go and check out my science fiction space opera series. Once again, I thought this was going to be a short episode, and it wasn't. But I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it, and hope I didn't get too personal for you. If I did, too bad. You listened to it and didn't turn it off, so that's on you. Have yourself a great week. May the 4th be with you. May the Force be with you. Wherever you are, I hope you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. And we'll talk to you again in a little over a week's time. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.